Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and listening to us talk about our young institution and young writing across the curriculum program. So we have the benefit of being a small college. I'm going to bring up the slides. Chris is going to bring up the slides. So yes, it takes a village, the past, present, and future of a WAC program at a young university. So please progress. So we're going to talk about the past. And the past is a very recent past. Not too long ago, we started this, our undergraduate bachelor's degree in 2015. We were approved to launch, and so that we have. And it is a health sciences focused degree. So all of our students are interested in pursuing careers within the health professions. I'll pull my mask a little bit away so I'm a little bit less muffled. Within that, our curriculum has always had an emphasis on writing, critical thinking, information literacy. So these are essential components. And the way that we've designed our curriculum is that we've scaffolded around a hierarchy of learning outcomes. So course learning outcomes, general education learning outcomes, program learning outcomes, and institutional learning outcomes. And although we don't have them listed here, within the course learning outcomes, every course has specific objectives or outcomes that students are expected to achieve. And for our composition courses, being able to write structured proficient prose is important. However, it goes beyond just our composition courses. So we have our general education learning outcomes, which also have written composition, information, literacy, and critical thinking as essential components that are mapped to the composition courses, but then trained in other courses, in chemistry courses, like Dr. Wassenberg. So he's going to talk a little bit about that right now.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how, as an example, we've used writing in more than just the English courses. And so a good example is our freshman science courses, the Bio 110 and Chem 110. So these are what all freshmen are taking here. And within those lab components of the course, which is designated by the L, is they have to write lab reports. And this helps them build up their writing skills so that when they eventually do their capstone research experience in our College 320 course, they have become more proficient at writing research papers. Over the process of this is how we started. Each of our instructors thought, yes, this is a great thing to do, have lab reports. And then we started talking to each other, started to take the student evaluation, peer evaluations, and really build consistency over these types of things so that students repetitively build their skills instead of them being siloed into each course. This took teamwork to make the consistency on literature, references, things of that nature, how it's structured. We also incorporated more scaffolding of those assignments so that they could build up those skills instead of just have a bunch of lab reports. And then we took things that English was doing, like the scaffolding and peer review process, and really incorporated the same mechanisms, the same worksheets and things so that it complemented those courses, and so that it builds up that writing through the past and now where we are in the present. So I'll hand it over to my colleagues, William Davis and Liz Ryder.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. My name is William, and Liz will be presenting just after I do, but I'm going to start talking about the present, and I want to pick up right where Chris was leaving off there, right? And I think when you say it the way he just did, it makes sense, right? Like the faculty agree and they decide, cumulatively, like that these are going to be, the literature review, this is the scaffolding. And it almost seems like that happens in a snap without a whole lot of effort. And that is incorrect. It is absolutely a work of collaboration that requires, I think, pretty continuous effort. And so there's 4 areas that I'm going to talk about right now, and then I'll be passing it over to Liz, and she's going to be building actually on the last one. But the first is recruiting and hiring. And I can speak from the humanities and social sciences side, less from the math and the physical and life sciences side. But From our, especially from the humanities and social sciences side, a lot of our positions are hybrid positions. So for example, this year we were hiring something in so composition and philosophy, moral philosophy. Those are fairly distinct. And it isn't always easy to find a practitioner that feels comfortable in both areas, similar with sociology and psychology. And what that means is really what we're looking for is people who have an interdisciplinary background and or an inclination. And that is not easy because most of us were trained in a particular discipline. And so we know from our experience, from our advisors, from I mean, again, just even down to the sources that we're citing, right? We know this is our field. And what we're doing at CHS is we're really kind of expanding that, right? So maybe our faculty were trained in a single discipline, but we're learning from the expertise of each other to find collaborative solutions, right? And so whether it be, looking at those lab courses early on to just coordinating across different sections of composition, for example. This is something that it might seem pretty easy when you just look at it and say, oh, of course, they're going to all agree. But it isn't always that simple. And part of that might be because we don't always have a common language. We don't always have a common vocabulary with each other. And that, again, is partly because of our disciplinary training. Certain things maybe we take for granted. But importantly, what we're trying to do at CHS is certainly develop this common language, but it also is something that plays out with our students as well. So they're beginning to see, okay, this is how the practitioners get along, right? This is how they manage working in these different groups. Yes, it's English, or yes, it's biology, or it's physics, or whatever it is. Certainly they're distinct faculty, and one faculty isn't teaching in all of these different areas, but what they're finding out is some of these assignments will connect across courses, even across years. And one of the ways that can happen is through collaborating on course proposals. And that's something that we have started doing in the last year or two, and saying less, you faculty, individual, this is your course, you're going to propose this, and then everything else will follow from that. That initial proposal. No, what often happens is we're having multiple faculty working on a single proposal, perhaps even from different disciplines. And I will tell you, it's messy, but the outcome and the product, I think, is pretty strong. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Liz Ryder-Paxman.
Thank you. And William says messy, I think fun, because it's really fun to kind of, dip into other people's minds and see what they think about, the same things. And actually, one thing that we've been working on this year is the first year experience course proposal. And that's been really exciting because we have people from across programs, communication, I'm working on it, I'm humanities and English faculty, that people across the board working on these collaboratively on these first year courses that instill these values that Ricky mentioned earlier, those institutional level outcomes of critical thinking and all of that, and written and spoken communication. And it's been really exciting to kind of work on those as a collaborative unit. And then healthcare seminar class, another example of an upper division class that different faculty teach each time, and bring in people that they may know from a career field or from the healthcare field that might gel with our students, so they can learn different things about the world they're going to enter. And then some other kind of current initiatives that we have are, we all kind of work collaboratively to scaffold and build up to those higher level assignments. And I would say probably all of the upper division classes at least are writing intensive. And so in our initial classes, we try and build up to that. And then we have pretty holistic support by the MCS, and the reason we call it the MCS and not just a learning center or an LRC or a writing center, it's a media and communication studio, because we really do try and support initiatives from across disciplines and across formats. And the really exciting thing about that is we have a lot of faculty volunteers as well as the peer assisted learners. They're kind of well prepared and handpicked students who help support their peers in the Learning Center. And so that's really cool, because you can have, I send my music students there for their podcast assignment, and they might go and speak to someone from English or communications or biology about that podcast assignment. And if they go multiple times, they'll get those multifaceted responses, and that's really exciting to me. And then we've been working on community outreach with outside organizations, which is something that they're going to kind of talk about expanding on in the next part. Gloria and Jill are going to kind of take over that. But we've been working with Lassen Volcanic National Park currently, and they have lots of research projects that they've shared with us that our students have been working on in our English composition classes, or Composition 2 class. And with that, I'm going to pass that over to Jill and Gloria to expand upon how we're growing those programs.
Hi, I'm Jill Dahlman, and this is
Gloria Poveda.
I am an assistant professor of English here at CHS, and Gloria is service learning. So we are collaborating. Some of the future endeavors that we plan on incorporating include continuing our partnership with Lassen Volcanic National Park. In this particular partnership, what we are doing is we're taking a list that is over 20 years old and over 150 projects from Lassen Volcanic National Park to try to help them out, help their scientists out, to help the museums out, the curators, and to help their education and outreach departments. So it does require collaboration across disciplines, and we're hoping to convince one particular scientist at our school who specializes in bees to come on over and do some research with Lassen Volcanic National Park. So I'm going to let Gloria talk about that collaboration.
So in case you don't know, service learning typically is an add-on to a larger content area such as English or chemistry, philosophy, and CHS has the unique distinction of having designed service learning to be its own academic area that is a requirement for students. And so students come on and they do a year-long series. There's 2 courses. And what we've started to do, and this is the future endeavors, is like Jill mentioned, we partnered with Lassen Volcanic National Park. And coming into this new year, we're going to take our foundations class where they will start working on research, project-based project proposals that will then in the spring semester, they will partner with a local community to come in and then perform like sort of the direct service from those research projects that came out of Lassen Volcanic National Park and bring them into our local communities to bring in science outreach education, to expand that, what students in our area may or may not know about the national parks, and to get them more involved. And that's one of those areas that we're discussing, and so the collaboration across disciplines. In addition, Research Day here at CHS was focused on the science courses. And so this last year, we were able to incorporate service learning projects as part of Research Day. And moving into next year, I'm actually going to be co-teaching a class with one of the chemistry professors. So we're doing, like computational drug discovery along with service learning for students to have that experience and why community engagement would be really important around drug discovery. And lastly, and before I hand it back off to Jill, we are incorporating e-portfolios. So in that writing across curriculum, how can we really encourage our students to look at all of their classes, and then, like we said, very holistically, how do they curate for themselves what they have learned over the time that they've been here at CHS from all of their courses, to take the writing pieces, the collaborative pieces, the community engagement pieces, the pieces from their labs, as Dr. Wastenberg discussed, all those lab reports, everything that they've written, how do they bring all of that into one e-portfolio that they can then use professionally as they're moving into the next stage of their healthcare profession.
We've also undertaken to create our own peer-reviewed journal, and even though it is in the nascent stages, the interdisciplinary Journal of Science and Society has 2 student editors, and we're starting to vet some of the articles that we hope will be put on a website. And then finally, when I came here 2 years ago, there was no codified writing intensive program across the disciplines, yet every single class that I spoke to a professor on, and it's pretty easy when you have, when you're just starting up and there's only a few professors, relatively speaking. I came from a department of 60 English professors. Yeah, that's not here. So, which is wonderful. But what I discovered was that we were already, everybody was already incorporating writing in. So now what we would like to do next is to codify that writing intensive and create a program that branches disciplines, provides some kind of incentive for people to make their courses writing intensive, and continue to move forward from there. So this now becomes the Q&A section. So I'm going to stop the share. And here we all are. So hi, everybody. It's good to see everybody. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask that you put in, yes, by the way, that was a picture of Bumpus Hell on from Lassen Volcanic National Park on that last slide. Bumpus Hell is named after a little little guy who was, and I do not use that euphemistically, he was small, who got trapped inside Bumpus Hell and pretty much took his leg off the first time, and then did it again, because that's what you do. Anyway, so what we're talking about now is, I think our next step is to ask questions, ask you or have you ask us questions, and we'll go forward from there. You can't see us because we look really short right now. So hold on for a sec. Let's just see if we can. There. Ah, okay. Wait. Let's see if we can go this way. Do we go this way? Let's go that way. Okay.
We would all have to stand up.
That means you guys are standing over there. We're figuring it out. This is keep backing up, back up, Chris. Back up.
Oh my gosh. You have a question though, Jennifer.
Okay, so Jennifer has a question. We can hear you. We can kind of sort of hear you, but not really. So, oh, it's in the
Oh, yeah.
chat. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, just type it in the chat. That, yeah, we
Because
can
we
just.
can-
Is it okay if I just use my,
We're having audio difficulties, so
so
please
no microphone?
let it rip.
No microphone?
What, we have a microphone. Our
Jennifer,
speakers
I think you
have-
can. What we can do is I'll try and type that question in as you're asking it. So please go ahead and just use your
Go
voice.
ahead.
Okay. So first of all, it sounds like you're doing some great things, and clearly you're very energetic. That's exciting, especially for me. I'm on the East Coast and it's 5 o'clock and I'm getting tired. So thank you for that. So I'm curious about your media communication studio. You noted that you had faculty volunteers there, and you also have student volunteers. Is this like a work study project, or are there work study students there? Is it sounded like it was maybe linked to your writing center as well. Could you speak a little bit more about that one?
Yeah, I can take that one for now. So the work studies, or the students that we're talking about, are the PALS peer-assisted learners who work with us on courses, and usually the ones who work with us on humanities courses or English courses will be assigned hours to tutor in our media communication studio, and that's all online at the moment. It's on WC Online, and so they do video appointments and they can file share and things like that. And then faculty volunteers as well. So and we also have work studies who are students like PALS, but they don't do it for credit, they get paid. So it's a slightly different position, but they're also handpicked to a degree. We kind of choose to work with the students that we really want to work with, and that really want to work with us. And then, yeah, the faculty volunteers, Jill can probably talk about this a little bit too. You know, she sends out the email and solicits interest, and we usually have a good range of faculty across programs who will help support us in the media communication studio. And, you know, sometimes we'll recommend a certain person because they might be really good with one or two things. But oftentimes students will book appointments with whomever is available, and then get feedback from someone they may not have met before. But everyone gets to know each other pretty quickly around here because we're still pretty small.
I love that model that faculty are involved in that too. So I run the DigiSpace at my campus, well, at my university, I guess technically, but we have a couple of campuses. And one of the things that is always tricky is we don't have necessarily like media majors. We have the communication majors, but not that many of them. Same thing with humanities. So when I'm hiring students, I don't have like a specific pool that it's easy to pull out of, you know, but through majors. My other question, or just I guess maybe comment, is I also run the ePortfolio program at our university. And so I'm curious to know if you have thought a little bit about the kinds of software that you'll be using or how you'll be managing the ePortfolio element of it, because one of the things that I've found to be really helpful, as the first person was talking, I'm sorry, I forgot who's who here, but when you were talking about working together and collaborating with faculty and starting to see cross-discipline connections, that's a great way to use ePortfolio, is to really to take that and have students put certain pieces or request that they put certain pieces to get started, and then they can start to see those connections across. And one of the things that we're working toward is recognizing or organizing the portfolio, not just by course, but also using categories to help students identify skills, so that then they can move across those different years and across those categories. So for example, in our nursing program, we have, there are a number of like content-based pieces of information that students show, like certifications and that kind of thing. But then also they have reflections about things that are not so easily captured with like testing. So soft skills sort of things like empathy and self-care and like things that are kind of like the buzzwords now in that particular field. But I think what that allows for is that they then are able to see, oh yeah, I started to do this work in English when we did peer review, when we talked about, this particular topic, and now I'm looking at it from the nursing point of view, which has been really interesting to see how they start to make those connections if you sort of put the breadcrumbs along the way, and then they can hopefully follow along too.
Yeah, I kind of want to jump in for a second, Jennifer. That sounds really exciting what you're doing.
Very well, but we see it was an e-portfolio question, so we were ready to jump into that if that was a question. Yeah, here. Okay.
I can wait.
So we'll see what we do here. And then I know that Jill had she would add something to the MCS question. In regards to the e-portfolio, what we are currently working on is through our software management system, which is Canvas. And so now we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I know what we're looking for in service learning. I made some notes. I wouldn't go too far off what I wanted to say here, and what we're going to be asking students to put together. And again, I'm sorry I didn't hear everything you mentioned. So if I'm being repetitive of something you said, I apologize. But what we are looking for is really to have students view this as a way for them to put together evidence of what they have done. So we really want to look at for our sort of signature assignments, we are looking for sort of podcasts and videos, and how are they engaging in those ways to bring forth that deliverable that they're going to be doing with the community partner. So then how are they're writing reflections, they're writing literature reviews on like sort of the historical, doing some historical archival research on the community partner, on the location, and then we're doing the reflections. And then what comes together is going to be like, what are those projects? How are they prepared for, to deliver in a classroom setting as an extracurricular activity? How are they co-curricular activities? We're doing evaluations, analysis, recommendations, and then writing samples from across different courses. Now, right now, and I'll send it over to Ricky here. And like I said, we're going to be using Canvas as our way of packaging it and then sharing it.
So I'm not sure as the capability of Canvas yet, as far as sharing the ePortfolio as like a professional document, but at least it's an archival service where students can house the work products that they have produced and submit it through Canvas. So one of the things, like early in the presentation, what we talked about, and I'll just preface, I saw that Jill had given herself an introduction. I'm the Assistant Dean of Curriculum and Assessment and an Associate Professor of Biomedical Sciences. So that will give you my background a little bit. So not an English professor in Jill's department of one. But so learning outcomes frame our structure for everything. And our learning management system, Canvas, has a capability for us to be tagging those two courses. So we've built our learning outcome structure into our learning management system. And then we populate them to the courses and delivery experiences that we have created course shells for. So faculty can directly assess student work with those outcomes. So it's automating the tracking for us from like a techie side of perspective, but students can see those outcomes in their courses. They can know what their expectations are. And then as soon as they are aligned with assignments, then and faculty evaluate those assignments against the outcomes, those data are collected. We can use those. Students can see that it's a qualitative / quantitative rubric where students can say, oh, like I'm achieving the outcomes at this level. And the fun thing is that because we have this hierarchical scheme, we may have these program outcomes or these institutional outcomes for written communication tagged to an upper division anatomy class if they have a research paper. And so we're collecting and creating this kind of like giant curriculum map. And we can, because it's tagged with specific assignments, when students are going to archive their work samples, we'll be able to see their performance, like a longitudinal mastery performance, which is really exciting from me. So we have to, we still have to work out some of the kinks for that, but that's a part of this future direction is getting students comfortable with, well, what are the expectations of your performance? What do we expect from your writing, and in what context, in what courses, and how does that change? And are there really these overarching outcomes that are going to be consistent in an upper division writing class and an upper division anatomy class, right? If it's writing, it's writing. And so we're looking on ways to kind of tie all of these things together through the e-portfolio so students can kind of see their skill development over time and archive all of that material. So we're looking to use Canvas for that purpose. And I know that they do have an e-portfolio module where students can archive their work from different courses that contributes into that. So,
yeah. And how that ends up getting shared to other places, that's one of the kinks we're working on. That's, where we're going to, for now, a lot, I would say majority of our students are applying to say medical school or the School of Pharmacy. That's still part of our system. So in regards to sharing amongst us, like, at a higher level, I think that'd be pretty easy as we move forward. This will be the first year that I know we're instituting this into our service learning courses. So a year from now, we'll be able to report on how this all came to fruition.
And I think William wanted to say something, so I'll let him jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. There were a couple of things, but I think you guys are already touching on them, so I don't want to beat it to death. But we're absolutely looking, to speak back to what Jennifer was asking or talking about with WordPress and things like that. That's something that we're really interested in, and perhaps not necessarily in the courses that we're discussing right now, but there's another, there's actually a grant, an NSF grant that we're working on, and actually a number of faculty are. And one of the things that we're trying to do is track students' progress over the year. And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about with it is how, whether it's something like you're writing, because again, we have one major, right? Most of our students want to work in their health sciences. If they don't, that would be kind of strange, because that's basically the major. So one of the things that we've been considering and really thinking about is how would you think about your own bedside manner, right? And certainly you're very, very far away from needing to really worry about that too much. But if it is the case that we are in a place in the next 5 to 10 years where we're going to have the same amount or more telemedicine, then if that's the case, it seems likely that a lot of individuals would be going online, would either be watching videos, would be trying to find reviews, try to find out something about their health practitioner, right? And so what we're really trying to get the students to think about is craft your own message, create your own, I don't know if I want to say identity, but create your own kind of personality that you want to be. This is the kind of health practitioner that I want to be. And what we're hoping is they write that in their first year, they look at it again in their second year and they think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that. And then by the time they're finished with us, they're still, again, not a health practitioner, but they're really moving on that path and they're able to look back and see. And so we're not necessarily saying that all of that needs to be published, at all times, but it's something that internal to themselves that they can go back if they don't want to share that WordPress site or something like that with others. They could keep it something personal, but when the time comes, they would be able to share that out. And I think that would be something strong, whether they're thinking about a professional school, to be able to share that kind of self-reflection, and that kind of critical self-analysis is one of the things that we're really trying to emphasize. And one of the ways that we want to do that is through writing, but as well, Liz was saying too, like talking about podcasts, talking about videos, right? It doesn't just have to be, but a good script will get you pretty far, I think, sometimes too. So let me stop there and turn it over to Jill Dolman.
We're going to unmute me. So our next, does anyone have another question, or do we want to open it up to where you think we should go next? Or I'd prefer to go ahead and get all of your questions answered first.
If I might, I would just love to make a suggestion to you, because it sounds like I followed a similar path. I work a lot with nursing students, but our ePortfolio program started in English. So what I would just recommend to you is this book to get started. It's Catalyst in Action. If you haven't looked at any of the ePortfolio literature, this is really, we've used this to help educate faculty. I've learned a lot from it. There are multiple pieces that go with that. And there's a whole, there's just a whole system that, you know, you could use and tap into of literature around ePortfolio. But this one I feel like was really helpful, especially when I was getting started. So I applaud your efforts, and I think it's going to be great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm supposed to, okay. Yeah, it is changing of the guard, changing of the guard. Hi, everybody. Okay, so what, does anybody have any suggestions for where they think we should go next based upon what we showed you, what we talked to you about? Go ahead, anybody? I have a good half hour here, so don't be shy.
I'll jump in again if nobody else is going to.
Go for it.
Again, I just, it's really exciting to me to see when people are starting out, because mostly at my university, I'm the you know, the group of one that's super excited, and I'm trying to pull everyone else along. But a couple of the things that I would say that might be useful to think about as you structure that idea of is to, or like pulling through your ePortfolio, using your ePortfolio to help students navigate and build that professional identity. Again, one of the things that I would really recommend is, even if you don't use like a WordPress, but have something that can be easily shared publicly, because when you have a real audience and it can go outside of the university, the stakes really change, you know. So even if nobody looks at it, it's still a possibility that they could, you know. And so one of the things that we found is, once students start building stuff and they start not just putting the things that are required in there, but also bringing some of their own interests into it, that's when you start to see them actually use this tool beyond the university. And so giving that option and kind of maybe so, like helping to support those kinds of ideas, I think are really important. The other thing is the audio and the video elements of things. I love that you have that media center available. We have been working on that too. And right now I have about 6 work study students, which is great, but they cycle in and out. So, you know, it's like, there's really, you know, it's really only 2 or 3 that are really good at something. And then, you know, things keep moving. But having them incorporate some of their own projects into portfolio about the technology they're using can be really valuable. So you can use it as a resource, they can use it as a project. And then what we do is we have a multimodal badge. So if they create a certain number of projects and then they have different like elements to those projects, like a variety of projects, then they can earn a badge as well. That has been a little, I guess, less successful, I'd say, because it's, again, not like an assigned thing, but it's mostly the students that I work with. But what we're finding is the more people know that you have a center where they can send their students to get help with those kind of projects, the more likely they are to assign them. And the key is having that that personal touch, I guess, right? Is to be able to say like, hey, I saw your students were doing a podcast, or, do they need some help, or do you need some resources, or, something like that, that really just helps people to cement those types of assignments in, can really go a long, long way. And I put the address of our site that's open to whoever wants to look at it. It's not behind a firewall or anything. So there's lots of resources there. If there's anything that you think, would help get you started or just think in, I'm also happy to chat with anybody after this. But now that I've taken up a lot of time, I'll be quiet.
Well, one thing I do want to go ahead and pick up on is when you talked about students writing for an outside audience. That was the reason why we brought in Lassen Volcanic National Park, was because we were giving them an audience that wasn't a teacher, that actually could go somewhere. So our students were this particular semester, this past semester rather, they made, I have actually in my office a mobile of bats. So with white nose syndrome and healthy. So I have a bat mobile in my office, and posters, things that they made for an outside audience, namely the Discovery Museum at Lassen Volcanic National Park. So they gave us a list of, like I said, 150 items that were on their wish list, but they never got time to do. So they didn't care that it took 15 weeks to go through a project. Some of Liz's students did some remarkable things with soundscapes and websites and beautiful artistic work. So I'm going to let her take over from here.
Yeah, when you were talking about the making the content available for an outside audience, we used Wix just because I can support that because I've used Wix a bunch, but yeah, lots of different ways to do that. And so some of the students made things like interactive maps of endangered species where they did their own artwork, so they got to kind of put their own personality into it. And that's the type of stuff they could really use for an e-portfolio to show their technical skill and their creativity, but also their research skills, because this is for an important purpose, and this is for a public audience, and that really made them accountable for the way in which they talked about these environmental issues and species related issues, and also kind of help them step up a little bit more, and kind of add that extra layer, I think, that they don't necessarily consider all of the time when they're writing just for their faculty audience.
And I think that what's important is that I did a survey and so did Liz, and mine was on reading, whether they were reading different types of articles, more serious articles than just going to Google. And Liz was on their attitude toward the actual writing of the assignment. And for mine, they said that because they knew they were writing for scientists at Lassen, that they were very, very cautious with making certain that the articles were peer reviewed, and that even though they were struggling to read through them because they're freshmen, but that they were doing their best, and they really didn't want to give them outdated or wrong information. And that was important to see. Liz found something similar. You want to mention that?
Yeah, well, are you referring to the survey results?
Yeah,
the general class surveys. Yeah, well, mainly what I found in my responses, they were doing this partly during a pandemic, and the students had not really ventured out as much as they perhaps would normally, and it helped them kind of connect with the outside world a bit more. And I found that was a constant stream through a lot of the comments that I got on the surveys, that they felt more connected. They also liked the aspect of collaboration, because we had the students collaborate in pairs or groups of 3 on those projects. And it was really neat talking about synthesis. And earlier I wanted to say that the synthesis that I see between the students that have taken William's philosophy and ethics classes, and then when they go and synthesize stuff in the lab, they put that together, and that's really fun and exciting to see, because they're like, oh my gosh, this chemical is terrible, and we put it in our bodies. What is that about? But I'm digressing. But we had them pick from this, we all took on certain research questions that we thought we could support the best, and the things they were asking for as well, like whether it was a media project or perhaps it would lend itself better to a poster presentation, that kind of thing. So we kind of picked subjects and what was required for the project. And students picked one thing each individually and wrote an exploratory paper about it. And then when they paired up, they had to work on just one subject. So they realized that when they, decided to do the other person's subject, all the information they had researched for their project or their first paper was super useful, because it showed them the kind of critical aspect to research that, okay, we're focusing on this one thing, but these 5 other things are super valid and we can integrate all of that. And so they kind of learned that through osmosis and just very organically through that process, which was really neat. And then they put their heads together and collaborated on these amazing projects. So yeah, having a bit of freedom as well was really important for them.
One thing I want to add on to what Liz and Jill are saying here, and I think all of the presenters are saying this as well, is we have a particular kind of student at our institution, right? They all kind of want to do a very similar kind of, they all want a very similar kind of professional job. And so one of the things that is challenging is, as was mentioned earlier, a lot of our students are going to be going to some of our own institutions, like our sister colleges maybe. Well, there's only so many seats, right? And so one of the things that, whether they're applying for our institution or outside of our institution, if they're just focusing on scores, if they're just focusing on GPA, MCAT, or DAT, or something like that, it'll certainly give those other professional schools and institutions a snapshot of who they are. But if they can create their own narrative, write their own story, develop a voice, not every one of our students wants to do that, fair enough. But many of them do. And they come to our institution, and we don't have as many electives as I would imagine pretty much most other institutions would have. We will get there, but we don't yet. And so in the meantime, that's one of the things I think is really fabulous about what the faculty and administrators really here are telling you guys about, is the ways that the students even themselves are beginning to use some of these assignments to differentiate themselves, right? And one of my hopes is that they'll take the Batmobile, or they'll take some lesson from this, right? And be able to talk about that in an interview or in some other kind of setting where they can essentially translate some of this work, right? So I maybe did it in service learning, but I'm going to make this something that I talk about in my, maybe in my personal statement, or maybe in some other aspect of my professional school application. I'm talking a whole lot here, so I'll back off. But if anybody wants to, and maybe it's Jill, maybe it's somebody else, if they want to mention something that we've been thinking about, because I think, Jennifer, you mentioned badges. And I know that's something that I've talked with Jill Dahlman about before. And maybe even building off of that, something where they could self-select and say, certain number of students, I want to do these writing intensive courses, and I want to get a certificate out of this, right? And that's yet another way that they can begin to distinguish themselves from some of their peers, which I think is only going to benefit them in their professional careers.
We do have concentrations here. And one of the concentrations that I'm trying to push through amongst all the other little toys is the writing in the health sciences certificate or concentration, so that students feel accomplished enough to go to medical school and write proficiently. Because that's a big thing that we're hearing kickback from our sister college, is that the students are not as strong of a writer as they would like to see once they're in medical school. Now, that's not a direct reflection on us. They're making that as a blanket statement across all of the people they take in. So when you see something like that, you want to naturally try to fix it. So we're running our very first writing in the health sciences course this fall. So I think that I'm finding that there are more assignments that I want to give than we have time for. So there might be a writing in the health sciences too. But otherwise, I think that it's been entertaining talking to people to find out what is going to be expected when they get to a hospital or residency or something like that, that kind of a situation. And I've been really lucky to go ahead and have a good friend who is a chief medical officer at a major hospital in Idaho. So I'm constantly picking Troy's brain. He's really awesome. I see the discussion about having awards, which would be fantastic. Faculty nominate students. That was my undergrad background. we had the best writers got to go ahead and be tutors in the Writing Center for that particular subject, which was great. Do students comment on each other's work? Liz, I'm going to let you take that one. Oh, wait, Chris wants to take that one. Never mind. Here comes Chris. Changing of the guard once I get my foot unstuck. There we go. Woo.
So yeah, one of the things I had mentioned was with the lab reports, the peer review process. And this is not something we had originally built that well in the sciences. We had the idea to put it in there kind of independently from the English, but then what we really did was, because we are small, we talked to the English faculty that we had at the time, and this they had an assignment for peer review, and how do they break it down to make it very structured, because we noticed that our students could do peer review, but it was just very superficial. Yeah, you did a good job, but we really wanted them to think about it more from like how we think about peer reviews as academics, and be like, yeah, it can be good, but there's always something that can be improved. There's always, how clear did you convey your message? So we had them say, what was the hypothesis of this report? What did you get from these different sections, so that it really let the student that they were reviewing know, oh, my message got across fine. And like I said, this came from a different English faculty, but we really modeled it after that. When I go to my research course, I have them present a lot and work together collaboratively to work on each other's skills in that manner. And I think that helps provide that idea of like, yes, we're starting to become experts and we can help each other peer review and things. And so that idea of modeling it after what we do a lot of that here. Like, we try to be the role models, even though we're not in the health professions like they want to be, that we're still those types of things. So I don't know if Liz wanted to add anything to that.
I mean, I love hearing what you're saying, because I'm not always aware of how other people do peer reviews, but yeah, I mean, looking for different things in peer review across programs is probably one of the most empowering tools that students can learn as they transition to a professional life, because you never stop being peer reviewed and reviewing peers in one way or another, even if it's just sending a collaborative email, or learning to ask for help and talk to someone about, is this issue, like doctors do all the time, what do you think of this issue? How should I approach it? That kind of thing. And it's, how you develop stronger writing skills across the board. And yeah, I think over time, we've definitely all become more extensive in how we do peer review. Recently, we've used Achieve that has some really wonderful questions in its bank for peer review, and it helps students keep accountable, because they have to respond to the comments left by their peers, and the peers have to leave specific comments to be able to exit out of the program and complete the peer review. But yeah, I think it's something that we'll try and support across disciplines, so that really by the end of their program, they're extremely well-rounded individuals. And you can't really pigeonhole them, I don't think, as pre-med or simply health sciences students, because they have all of this experience that they've gained from their music classes or their service learning or their philosophy classes. So it's really exciting when those things kind of come together toward the end of the student's education, and they truly feel empowered and prepared for the very difficult path they've chosen, very rewarding and difficult path that they've chosen in their careers.
If I could build on that too, one of the things that we encourage, and I don't want to say that every faculty member does this, but I bet a lot of us do, is we talk to the students, and I'll say this certainly in the philosophy classes or humanities classes that I'm teaching, I'll have them work with a partner on a variety of assignments, and they often really dislike it. And we have to go through okay, you're not going to type left hand and I'll type right hand. Like, that's not what I mean by working together. So we talk a little bit more directly about what collaboration looks like, because whether it's in the physical and life science side, which is really large collaboration often, to humanities or social sciences, which might be, again, it could be large, but often a smaller group. How do you navigate that, right? And that's something that they have to really negotiate with each other, right? It can't just be, I'll write the first 3 paragraphs, you write the last 3 paragraphs, although of course many of them want to try to do that. But one of the things that I emphasize, and I think some of the other faculty do as well, is if you develop a kind of a relationship or a bond with this other student that's in some ways doing peer review for you, right? I mean, we could think about it in that way, that kind of partnership. Of course, you're reviewing each other's work, but maybe you're going to get pretty comfortable with them so that no matter where you are in the next 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, if you want to share something with them, you know that this person is going to give you honest feedback. You know they're going to give you straightforward feedback that's actionable. So in other words, they're kind of developing, hopefully, some trust, or somebody that no matter where they diverge and they go in different directions, they can reach out to them. And it might even be a little less pressure if they're not in the same program, if they're not doing the same kinds, if they're in a different institution or doing something else across the country, because then they don't feel that kind of competition, but they do feel that ability to, I don't know, to reach out and ask someone else to read, to look at what they've written or edit. I mean, again, it doesn't have to be just the written version. It could be a podcast, it could be a video, but if they can find 1 or 2 or 3 people through their years at our institution that they can kind of take with them for whenever they're done at our institution, I think that's a success. If we can help those students connect, and it won't work for all of them, but if we're able to help those students connect with each other, whether it's in a chemistry lab or an English course or service learning, I think that's one of the things that they can walk away with that's pretty beneficial, but that isn't something that you're able to assign a number to and say, oh yeah, this is a direct benefit for everybody.
I think that number assigning piece is especially tricky when it comes to using like a lot of the software that's designed for that, right? Like, because again, it's just like when you were talking about the LMS and being able to tag different things to go through. And I think that is such a useful tool for universities and like the archives and like that, because you can really see across the student learning. And it can be a really valuable tool for the students too, if they understand it, if they have access to it, if they get the point of it, right? But for a lot of them, if that's not explicitly explained and you're not working on that all the time, I know for us at least, it just, kind of goes by the wayside. Students like, they're checking the box. They're trying to finish the class. They're trying to just, finish the project, and they're not really that invested in the learning outcome, So that's where reflection is such an important piece for us. That's our one of the key uses of ePortfolio is to really say, what is the learning outcome? How do you understand it? And then what's the evidence that supports that you actually can do it, right? And those are the pieces that we all strive for. But I also think that control over audience is, again, a really important piece of that, right? Because again, if you're, just sort of like doing it to do it for the institution, for the teacher, for whatever, you just don't have the same stake in it. You're looking for the grade as opposed to the learning that is supposed to be coming out of that, And I think that's one thing that we always struggle with is helping students see that it's not just about the grade, because forever that's what they've been told, right? Like, to get into college, you have to get the right grades. To get into med school, you have to have the right grades. To get into, you have to take standardized tests. And so it really can create this huge disconnect for students and for professors too. Sometimes is what we found, is like, I call it getting beaten with the grade stick, but I'm a little pessimistic that way. So.
One of the things I want to go back in time to talk about was Chris had mentioned how the faculty model. I want to talk about our faculty volunteers because they're really special and amazing people. Every semester I send out 2 emails generally within a week of one another. And the first one is, are there any faculty members who would like to volunteer their time in the MCS, in the Writing Center, to go ahead and help students become better writers, better communicators? And the Dean of Faculty and Pedagogy, who used to be the chair of Math and Science, volunteers every single semester He's always there. You met Dr. Corniola. She's a contributor. Dr. Davis is a contributor. Now, some people have become known for a particular thing. Dr. Davis is known for his MMI, mock medical interviews or mini medical interviews practice. And I'm trying to think, Dr. Myers, he pretty much covers everything in the College 310 and 320, which is the Capstone Research Project. So, but people become known for certain things. And I think what's really special is that the students now feel that even outside of class, they know that these people will help them. And I think that that's really key. And they're not afraid to go up to them and talk to them and say, I need some help with my personal statement or my application for medical school. Can you give me a hand? When I first was hired, Dr. Davis said to me, none of our students want to be like us. And that is an understatement, but they now realize that we are, I don't want to call it tools, but we are a tool in their toolbox that they can come and they can access when they need to. So, yeah, my soapbox is over.
It's something that we didn't even mention earlier, and I think I probably should have brought it up in my portion because it was to do with faculty collaboration. But one thing that we have is Miko Miko. It was started by Jill when she came to CHS, and it's a faculty professional development, and it's fairly informal, and we meet every week. It used to be kind of more formalized workshops, but now every other week it's kind of a work study group, and so we can collaborate and learn how to collaborate on things like the course proposals and other projects, and share work across disciplines, really, share how we write assignments, things like that really help us focus on how to best help the students and how to make our assignments readable and thorough and all of those things that I think that help the students in the long run. So I don't know if Jill wants to elaborate. We only have a few minutes left, but on that particular aspect or anyone else. But that's something that is worth mentioning. That we try to do lots of things at the faculty level that are collaborative to really just help us serve our students better.